Sadnam, yogis and yoginis. Hello. Welcome back once again to one more part of this mantra course. And we have been exploring quite in depth the power of sound and experiencing the differences between different sounds. We've been doing some experiments with vowels, some experiments with the semi-vowels. Particularly, we found how they were connected to the chakras and to the bija sounds, which resonate on every chakra. And we've been exploring this, and we are leading the conversation towards the consonants. But before we go into the consonants, today we're going to explore a topic that I have already been mentioning a few times, and I think it's time to talk about it, which is the difference between Om and Ong. Yeah, in the Kundalini Yoga tradition, we use Ong Namo Gurudev Namo. We chant the Ekonkar coming from the Mul Mantra from Guru Nanak. And where is that coming from? And how is that similar or different from Om? So that's what we are going to do today, looking at the origins of Ekonkar and the what does Om mean and Ong and the connection between the two. We already talked about what the Om means, is this vibration which is everywhere in the universe, and out of this vibration comes the universe. It is the resounding echo of the Big Bang, but it's also the Big Bang. It's the sound of the Om is what creates everything, is the base underneath every material manifestation. Yeah, we were seeing through different experiments on the first video how sound can translate into form. And so the original sound, the primeval sound, the more primordial sound, the one that is below everything, that would be the Om. And we've been mentioning it a few times, especially in the last video or the last two when we were talking about the semi-vowels, because they are connected to the different chakras. And you will remember this drawing that we were doing the other day, and how Lam, Vam, Ram, Yam, Ham, Ah, they are aligned with every one of the chakras, and then we were coming to Om. So Om would be the bija sound for the seventh chakra. Seventh chakra would be the connection to the infinite and our spiritual connection. So the Om is the thing that is opening us to that spiritual connection. So let's talk about this Om, and from there we'll talk about the Ong. First of all, what is this Om, this symbol that we have here? Let's do it a bit bigger. It does look like a 3, but let's see where it comes from. But by the way, this is like in the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, we say that the Mul Mantra or the Japji is like the summary of the whole Sri Guru Granth Sahib, yeah. And the Mul Mantra is the condensation of the whole Japji. And Ekonkar would be like the condensation of the Mul Mantra, right? It's the most essential aspect of everything. In the same way, we say that Om contains all the essence of the Vedas. It is said like that. So if we look at what is this Om, the symbol comes originally from the letter A, which is something like this. Yeah? This is A. And then the U would be something like this. That's U. And then the M would be from this symbol. This is Chandra. Chandra is a little moon. It means moon. And Bindu means point. So this is often just written like Chandra Bindu. You can see this symbol in some of the deities, like I think it's Shiva or maybe Krishna. Maybe Krishna has it in the hand. In some drawings you will see a little Chandra and Bindu in the hand. And Bindu is one point, like one seed, and Chandra is a moon. Moon is a very feminine energy, so it's like feminine and masculine. And the Bindu is like the point, like a point of consciousness, like a point of light. And it's also like a passage to another dimension. It's sort of like as if you could cross through this Bindu, this Chandra Bindu, yeah? Crossing through it they could go to another world, another sphere. Yeah. So this Chandra Bindu point and moon, this would be the three aspects of A, U, and M. Yeah. And this is the cursive ligature of these three symbols. That's what we do like this. Yeah, so this is the cursive connecting these three symbols: A, U, M, A, U, M. Now, if you look online, you will find that even though it's written as A, U, and M, it's actually pronounced Om. We will talk about this in a few moments. But these A, U, M are three aspects, and these three aspects they are connected to the three stages of the creation of the universe, and you could also connect it to the three aspects of God. So the generating aspect, the organizing aspect, and the destructive aspect of God, which you can also associate it with the number 108, which is like a very second number. The malas have 108 beats, and 101 is the originating number. Yeah, the origin is 1. We start with number 1. The 0 is like the O of organizing, is like a perpetual cycle of organization. And the number 8 is associated with the infinite, which is associated to death. In the Kundalini Yoga tradition, we talk about the 8th spiritual body being the pranic body, and when the prana runs out, we die. So the 8 would be associated to death, and therefore the destruction. We can associate these three parts as well to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Yeah, they're generating the organizing and the destructive aspects. So all this is encoded within AUM. There is more things that we could connect to these three aspects, these three parts. But the number 3 appears very, very often. We can see it in the three aspects of us, like the animal, the human, and the angel sides of us. You could connect it to the three granthis that we have in our body, blocking the energy from ascending through the spine, accessing the three caves, and so on and so forth. There's so very many things. Yeah, the gunas, the doshas. There's many things which are three, and you can associate them, you can link them to these three aspects of God. And in the symbol of Om, these three sounds are U, M. However, the Om is not pronounced Aum. Yeah, we don't chant it like that. If we read if we go to Wikipedia, yeah, it says that when occurring within spoken classic and Sanskrit, this syllable is the subject to the normal rules of Sandhi in Sanskrit grammar. Sandhi is a word that comes from Samadhi, and it's about the union of sounds. So in this, we were talking about this union of sounds when we were doing the vowels. Let me write it again. This little diagram of the A, yeah, and then going forward would be towards the E, going upwards would be towards the U. Yeah, so this "ow" would be the sound of "om." Yeah, so in this case, the sandhi, this union of sound going from the A to the U, that is pronounced as an O. So if you read in Wikipedia, it will talk about how through the normal rules of Sanskrit grammar, then this would be pronounced as a O, like a long vowel O. It's called a monophthong. It would be. With a long vowel, and it is written like this, O with 2 dots. Yeah. So it would not be chanted Aum, but it would be chanted Om. Yeah. So this is the regular rules of grammar. However, if we keep reading the next paragraph in Wikipedia, is very, very interesting for what we will have to talk today, which is, furthermore, the final M is often nasalized. Yeah? And we talked about this nasalization of sound when we were talking about the projection of sound with the vowels. Oh, yeah, we're bringing the sound to the nose. Now, it says that when this sound is nasalized, the final M is often assimilated into the preceding vowel as a nasalization, is called ranga, and as a result, Om is regularly produced like, more pronounced like Ong, 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 in the context of Sanskrit. And so, when Om is followed by other letters, yeah, when you follow the Om with other letters afterwards, that M becomes a very nasal ng sound, which translates as almost like a G, Ong. Like it's not like when we do Ong Namo Gurudev Namo, we don't do Ong Namo Gurudev Namo, we don't. It's like a nasalized N which contracts. Yeah, it's a velar sound. So in the regular rules of Sanskrit, when you are followed Om with another consonant, then that would be this nasalization of the sound would create this feeling of a G at the end of the M. This is as much as I can understand from what the Wikipedia says. Again, as usual, a little warning: I am not a grammarian. I am not a Sanskrit scholar. This is not my specialty. I am a mantra yogi, a Kundalini yogi, right? And I am learning through all these texts and trying to understand what it says. But if you are a grammarian and you understand Sanskrit grammar and you studied this in detail, please write it in the comments so that it can help us understand. From what I read in Wikipedia, there is also different understandings of grammar and different versions. There's always been different understandings of how to say things, how to pronounce things. Even nowadays, English language is pronounced in many different ways, being British, American, or whatever. There's so many variations and accents, and we can imagine that in Sanskrit would happen the same. However, this is what is interesting, no? As the Sanskrit language is in connection with the language spoken in the Punjab, there would be this, crossing of cultures, and so this nasalization of the sound of the N becoming a G would be very interesting in Om becoming an Ong. So that's a particularly interesting aspect for us. Now, there is another very interesting thing for us regarding this ONG, yeah, Om becoming Ong, yeah. And again, this is not we just put this symbol, but actually it's more like a ng, very, very short G sound. We will see more about the different kinds of N, because there's 3 kinds of N in Sanskrit when we go to the consonants. But another important thing is when we were chanting the Bija mantras, for Bija sounds for the chakras, we were chanting them lam, 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 vam, 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 vam. And I mentioned how there is a tantric version of these sounds which would be lang, 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 vang, vang. So this would become lang. This would become vang. And if you follow through, when we get to the Om, it's reasonable to think that Om could become Ong. So there is a tantric vibration to this Om and could be transformed into Ong. That's another thing to take into account. So let's just experiment for a moment these differences between these 2 sounds, Om and Ong. And so in order to pronounce it properly, the way I was taught to chant Om would be to open the mouth and leave it open, and the tongue is flowing in the middle of the mouth so that the vibration can come through the tongue. But you are pulling the tongue back quite a lot. You are not closing absolutely completely the throat, but you are leaving very little space. So this is the velar aspect of the upper palate, and then this is the tongue. So forward would be the teeth. So you are bringing the tongue back and almost closing the upper palate. And so most of the air will actually come out through the nose. But you leave a little bit of space and you let the vibration of the and eventually, oh, yeah, oh, and eventually the lips close. The air keeps coming out through the nose, but the vibration is still resonating and you would feel it in your lips. So that would be the Om, yeah? And let's just chant it one or two times, just to experiment. Inhale deep. Okay, so it's O. It starts with the O. It's not Aum, but Om. Okay, so that would be the Om. Now, how is that different from the Ong? When we chant Ong, like in Ong Namo Gurudev Namo, the difference is actually very, very subtle, but you would totally close, yeah? Like in the Om, you are leaving the tongue back, but leaving a little bit of space. In the Ong, you really get to close completely, and all the air should come out through the nose. How can you know if the air is coming out through the nose even though your mouth is open? Well, if you close the nose, the air would stop coming out. So if you're doing oh, I'm closing my nose and the air still comes out, so it's clearly the air is coming through the mouth. But if the air is coming through the nose, right? So if you close the nose, the air stops coming out. So just try to make sure you know how it is, and don't do oh, but actually try to chant it. Bring the tongue back, let the air come out through the nose, and try closing the nose with the hand. Okay, so that's the vibration of the air is coming through the nose. Now let's remember the projection of the sun has to go up through the back of the head to the top of the 10th gate, yeah, the 7th chakra, and then coming down towards the third eye and then projecting the sound forward. That we talked about this in the video on the vowels. Now let's try this, but with the Ong. And so the tongue is closing completely. And now, how is the G sound made? The G is when the tongue is released. You are closing and then you release. So it's really, really, really soft at the very end of the sound. But that soft release has an effect on us. It's like a little contraction. So let's try that. Inhale. Very soft. And the mouth is still open. In Om, we were closing the mouth. In this Ong, we leave the mouth open. So let's try it again and see if you feel the difference. Or let's do something. Let's do Om for a few times, like 5 times, and then we will do Ong 5 times. And when you do it in this way, experience how it feels. What's the difference between the two? Start inhale with Om first. Feel the difference, feel how it feels, notice how you are. Notice the feeling of the space around your head, around your body, the breath. Let us chant Ong now. Inhale deep. Inhale deep. What has changed? And exhale and relax. Waheguru. It would be a nice idea if you make a pause on the video now and write in the comments how you felt. What was the difference for you chanting Om and chanting Ong, and then come back to the video. All right, hopefully you did a pause to write. So the feeling for most people is that when you are chanting Om, there is something opening up, and there is a vibration that is like a spiral vibration going upwards and like opening into the infinite, into the universe. Remember G-O-D, yeah, and the 108, and the 8 being infinite. So this Om and the closing of the lips and the vibration in the lips is just bringing you out towards the infinite. And it makes you want to go to a cave and meditate and live an ascetic life and become a Swami. And how different it is with Ong. Ong. Ong, without closing of the lips and with this little G at the very end. This G is like a contraction. And this contraction brings us back. We are opening up, then zoop, then we are contracted. Imagine if this big bang of the universe, which expands, which is very much the similar sensation with the Om, has a big crash, right? And the whole universe collapses back into one point. So this Ong would be the collapsation, yeah? Om would be the expansion, and Ong would be the contraction. And it brings you back to your heart, back to your center, back to your body, back to the world. And it's making us very present and very down to earth, yeah, in our bodies. So chanting Om has a more ascetic quality, and chanting Ong is more linked to the householder practice. Especially in the Kundalini Yoga tradition, we recommend always to keep a householder practice. For most people, this would be the ideal. For some people, it may be that your path is to go to an ashram and dedicate your life to this, or become a monk, go to a monastery and a Buddhist monk or whatever. Maybe it is your path, but for most people who are in the world, it's about having work, earning money, having a family, and all these things require being present in the world, not going into the ethers. So chanting Ong would be something that would anchor you much more down to this earth. So this is a good little introduction to the topic of Om and Ong. And in the following video, I'm going to talk about the possible emergence of Ong. How did Ong originated, and Ekonkar particularly. It's just a theory, but it's a very interesting aspect, a little research I have done. So I would like to share it and get your feedback on that. But I've been receiving feedback that the videos are very long, and many people are busy and they don't have an hour to do every lesson of this course, every session of the course. So I'm going to be doing slightly shorter versions. This is only half an hour. The other ones were always 1 hour. So hopefully this will be more easy to manage with whatever your schedule is. And, if you have time, you can watch one after another, every one of these parts of the course. But if you don't, then at least you don't have to leave it in the middle and then continue some other time. Or when you see the videos like, oh my God, 1 hour long, these are Ardaas. So this will be hopefully easier to digest. All right, so we'll stop here and then we'll continue in the next video on the origins of Ekonkar. And as usual, thank you for everything. And if you wish to subscribe, if you haven't, please subscribe, comment, like, all the usual things. Thank you for being with us, Saddam.